What is it about wide angle that I really like? Well, I think that wide angle photography allows you to create compelling and dramatic compositions. Wide angles are also really useful because they allow you to powerfully distort perspective and challenge the viewer perception. This is something called forced perspective. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as I get deeper into this conversation. And these aspects of wide angle photography, they're not just applicable to landscape photography. You can use these same techniques when you're working with other types of photography as well. But I'm obviously just going to be focusing on landscape today. And so just for reference, it used to be that like a 24 millimeter focal length was considered to be a really wide angle lens. But now the lenses just keep getting wider and wider. So you have a lot more options that are available to you. And my current widest lens is a 9 millimeter lens on a full frame camera. So that's really wide. That is so wide that I often have to struggle to keep my feet and my tripod legs out of the composition. And so a wide angle perspective can just open up whole new worlds of seeing, new ways of seeing the world and capturing the world around us. And it allows you to be super creative. So wide angle photography is actually pretty easy to get into. You don't really need a lot of specialized equipment. Of course, you need a wide angle lens. And so for full frame camera users, we're talking about 18 millimeters or wider. If you're doing photography with a crop sensor camera, 12 millimeters or wider is going to get you into that wide angle zone. And also for landscape work, you're going to want to have a ground level setup. So you're going to want a tripod that gets very close to ground level. You don't have to get the camera all the way flat on the ground, but usually having a tripod where you can remove the center column and splay out the legs so that they get more or less flat, that's really where you want to be. So with my setup, I can get my camera to about 6 inches off the ground. And you don't really want to get that much closer than that. So, the camera's on the tripod, and there's a ball head in between the tripod legs and the camera. And so, you're going to end up probably 6 to 8 inches off the ground. If you're closer than that, then you're probably too close to your foreground objects. So something that might be in the foreground right in front of your lens is going to be so close that you can't even focus on it. So you don't need to get all the way down to ground level, but something that'll get you down, 6 to 10 inches away from the ground is probably ideal. There also might be some specialized filters that you need for wide angle depending on the type of lens you're using. Some ultra wide angle lenses have got a bulbous front element. They're called Popeye lenses. And so basically the glass curves out. And it's really difficult to use filters on those lenses. And you have to buy these specialized oversized filter kits. So if you're using one of these Popeye lenses, you might want to consider one of these kits or do what I do. I just pretty much stop using filters altogether. And for most of my wide angle landscape work, I'm not even thinking about filters. And so that's something that you could just, you decide for yourself how important filters are to your personal workflow. And if you decide not to use filters, there are workarounds in Photoshop to deal with things like, for example, exposure blending. If you're not using a graduated neutral density filter, it's really hard to replicate the effects of a polarizer or a neutral density filter. So if you are using a lot of those for your work, then you might want to consider one of these ultra-sized filter kits if you're using one of these Popeye lenses. Most wide angle zooms don't have these Popeye designs, so you don't have to worry about it. You can just use filters normally. But for those really extreme ultra wides, that is something you have to consider.